Hey guys, it's Deen. Mario Party 3 is a hard game to critique. Deen, out. Okay, for real. If you look at the list of sales for Mario Party games, 3 actually did much poorer than you'd expect considering it's pegged as one of the top tier titles by many Mario Party fans. It's ranked 9 out of 16 in sales. Heck, it sits behind Mario Party 10 on the Wii U. The Wii U! Nintendo sold less Wii U consoles than they did Super Mario Party copies on Nintendo Switch. How on earth did Mario Party 10 beat out 3? Well, there are a few reasons actually. But before I get into those reasons, it should be stated that sales numbers don't always align with the best quality games. I could go into further detail about that, but to be honest, I could probably upload a whole other video on that topic alone. So I'll just focus on Mario Party. First off, Super Mario Party, Mario Party DS, and Mario Parties 8 and 9 had the luxury of being on 3 of the 4 best Nintendo selling consoles of all time. So while they may or may not be solid titles, they were definitely helped along in sales by those factors. That leaves Mario Party 1, 2, 10, and 4 ahead of 3. 4 was the first Mario Party on GameCube, so that helped its sales. 10 was the only one on the Wii U, so that definitely helped its sales. Now we have to ask the question, why was Mario Party 3 the worst selling Mario Party on Nintendo 64? It's actually not as much as a mystery if you look at the context. Mario Party 1 was released in 98 and 2 was released in 99. So when 3 came out in 2000, everyone already had a copy or two of Mario Party and were still playing them. We used to do this crazy thing back in the day where we'd keep playing our games well beyond their release date, rather than immediately jumping to the next big thing. At least that was the case with my circle of friends. And beyond that, there were tons of fun multiplayer games already available on the Nintendo 64, so when Mario Party 3 came out, a lot of us skipped it. We didn't need another Mario Party. We already had our fill. The other aspect to consider is that Mario Party 3 came out a year after Sega Dreamcast was released, the same year the PS2 was released, and a year before the GameCube and Xbox were released. Up until now, an average Mario Party 20-turn game would take about an hour, but during my playthroughs for 3, the average was closer to an hour and a half. For the sake of consistency though, I based my analyses off of a 20-turn game. Also debuting for the first time in Mario Party are 2 new characters, Daisy and everyone's most wanted Smash Bros character, Waluigi. It's nice to get some new characters finally as the original 6 were starting to get a little bit stale. But it ultimately doesn't change anything for the actual gameplay. Speaking of which, the costumes that were loved in Mario Party 2 are now gone, and sadly they'll never make a return. Another major change is the addition of the super hard character setting for CPU. This was available in Mario Party 2 during minigame play, but now you can set the CPU to super hard in the board game as well. I gotta say though, the CPUs are unreal in this game. In Mario Party 2, we'd usually choose the hard setting if we needed a CPU, but in Mario Party 3 you're better off choosing the normal setting. Super hard absolutely kills it. Hard is just a tad bit too difficult, though beatable at times, and normal is a bit too easy but good enough to fill in the roster for remaining players required. I've stated in the past that I'm not really a single player Mario Party player. I generally try and play with at least 2 more people. So I don't often have the same opinions as other reviewers when it comes to minigame balancing, since it seems like most of the reviewers are analyzing the game based off CPU behavior. I'll be doing the same with Mario Party 3, but I do feel it's necessary to warn you that if you're looking to play this game with 3 CPUs, there are some minigames that are literally impossible to win due to their programming. You also have the option to speed up the text and speed of movement on the board to save a bit of time. It's a great addition that I actually had forgotten about. When I started capturing footage for Mario Party 4 and saw that you couldn't speed up the board movements, it felt like the characters were taking ages to move. There is also a new addition to the event block. You can now get an item by landing on one. I actually don't like this. I think it was good enough when landing on an event block was a 50-50 between receiving coins or a star. The chance at catching an item seems redundant, especially since the item is random and usually gives you a skeleton key or a mushroom. Maybe if it was a guaranteed rare item, I'd be more okay with it. Actually, with that unplanned segue, I think I'll jump straight into the items. Items are the biggest change in Mario Party 3, and I think that's why so many people enjoy the game. They added so many to the game and allow you to dispose of certain items, like the skeleton key, so you're not forced to hold an item to take up an entire item slot. Not gonna lie though, the skeleton key always makes me feel a bit guilty when I try to get rid of it. Sorry buddy. Additionally, the game allows you to hold up to 3 items, so there are so many more things to consider before rolling your dice block now, especially because there are so many items and a few different ways to earn them. Passing by an item shop will give you the option of buying from Toad or from Baby Bowser, and they both have a different selection. Or you'll be asked a random question by either Baby Bowser or Toad, in which case you'll have to answer it from the perspective they want to get your best chance of earning a better item, or in some cases even up to 3 items. The separate Toad and Bowser shops I can accept. It adds a bit of randomness and both shops have a decent enough selection of items to buy. Besides, the items available at a shop should always have a bit of randomness to them. But in my opinion, landing on an item space should only get you an item minigame. The Baby Bowser and Toad questions are kinda dumb, especially since there's no rhyme or reason as to what the correct answer is. Sometimes you'll answer the question in the exact way one of them would want you to answer and you'll earn a crappy item. Or you'll answer the question opposite of what you'd expect they'd want to hear and earn 3 excellent items. There's too much of an element of randomness that I don't like. At that point, you might as well just make it so that landing on the space gives you a random set of items up to 3, because that's basically what it feels like. I'd much prefer if the space was strictly an item minigame spot like it was in Mario Party 2. Actually, this is a general theme in this review. There are so many things this game does better, but it always seems to take it a step too far, hence why I named it 2 step forwards and 1 step back. The third way to get an item is landing on an event block at random. You'll have a 33% chance of it being a star, coin, or item, but like I said, the item is usually a mushroom or skeleton key, so it's not that exciting aside from the rare occasion you get a better item. Running through the actual item list, you have your mushroom, golden mushroom, warp block, boo bell, Bowser suit, and dueling glove all returning with the same function as last game. The magic lamp also returns, but it costs 10 coins less this time, so it's only 20 coins. I prefer the original price, but it's still expensive enough that you can't guarantee you'll have enough to buy a star if you purchase it. The plunder chest is also back, but this time instead of stealing an item from a random player, you can choose the player you'd like to steal from and it'll steal a random item from them. So if someone only has 1 item, you can guarantee what you're stealing from them this time, which could basically result in them throwing an item away to make sure you don't get it. There's nothing like forcing an opponent to waste a magic lamp out of fear of you stealing it. The skeleton key also returns and serves the same function, however this time there are 2 main changes regarding it and the gates it unlocks. For starters, you can toss the skeleton key now instead of being forced to hold them, which is a good change in my opinion. The second change I'm not really a fan of. In Mario Party 2, the gates were along the regular path, so if you didn't have a skeleton key, you'd walk right past the gate. The way it's set up in this game, however, is there's an extra junction and a board space right before the gate. So in order to get to the gate, you now have to move off of the main path. So now, when someone who doesn't have a skeleton key passes by these junctions, they have the option to turn towards the gate and bounce off of it and continue on their route, and it eats up 2 or more of their spaces. This adds an element of strategy to the game, but it's not an element that I really like. You shouldn't be able to manipulate a dice roll to this extent in my opinion. Rolling an 8 should mean you have to move 8 spaces, not have the option to move 6 or 8. But aside from those 2 changes, the skeleton key is pretty much the same as it was in Mario Party 2. New to the Mario Party formula is the reverse mushroom. This item breaks the game way more than the extra space that leads to the gate does. The reverse mushroom can be used on any player, including yourself. The benefit of it is whenever you back up into a junction, you can pick whichever direction you'd like to move, even if the direction is usually decided by a random board event. Ultimately, this means that you can use reverse mushrooms to essentially pick any part of the board you'd like to visit, rather than just using it to go backwards as was intended. If you reverse towards a boo, you can steal coins and then bounce off of a locked gate and go back in the same direction to steal coins again. There are a ton of options the reverse mushroom can be used for, and it adds a lot of strategy to the game as a result. It's too powerful of an item to only cost 5 coins and appear as much as it does. I'm not against the concept of a reverse mushroom, I just don't like its implementation in this game. Luckily, it's one of those items that playing with casual Mario Party 3ers won't lead to too much exploitation. But when you start playing a few games and figure out what exactly you can do with a reverse mushroom, it starts to become a sought-after item in a few boards. Joining the reverse mushroom is the poison mushroom, which you can use to limit yourself or one of your opponents to a 1 through 3 dice. A cellular shopper, which can be used to call the item shop to your location at any time. A boo repellent item, which can be a great item to guarantee nobody steals from you, or at least force someone to steal nothing from you so that you can lose it. A Bowser phone, which will send Bowser to you or any other player and force a Bowser roulette. A lucky lamp, which will result in the mushroom genie moving the location of a star. And an item bag that will grant you up to 3 random items depending on how many slots you have available. The item bag costs 30 coins, so it's usually only worth it if you don't have any items. But even then, I'd rather just spend my coins on something I can guarantee. Although the benefit of the item bag is that it can also give you a rare item. I keep mentioning rare items, so at this point you're probably wondering what I mean by it. All the previous items I mentioned can be found through minigames or an item shop, so you have a lot more control about how you get them. There are 4 items, however, that can only be obtained by chance. If you're lucky enough to get one, you'll either receive it from Bowser or Toad when you answer a question, you might find one if you bump into an event block that holds items, or you might get lucky and find one when you buy an item bag. They're very rare, hence the name, and during our playthroughs for footage, we only encountered a rare item twice, and both times it was the barter box, which allows you to swap all of your items with an opponent of your choice. There's also the Wacky Watch, which will automatically set the game clock to the final 5 turns, the Koopa card, which allows you to collect all the coins in a bank simply by passing it instead of landing on it, and the Lucky Charm, which you can use on yourself or another player to force a Game Guy minigame. I'll discuss Game Guy in a bit. That covers all of the items. As you can see, there's a lot and it adds so much to Mario Party 3, but in a lot of ways, it adds too much. Definitely makes the game more exciting though, and if you're looking for a wild party, which let's face it, if you're playing Mario Party you probably are, it adds a ton to the mix of things. But again, for me it adds just a little bit too much. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There's something I keep forgetting to mention with these games, and I'm not really sure where to squeeze it in, so I'll just talk about it real quick. Bowser is a softie. Well, at least in Mario Party 3 he is. Lots of times players will avoid him, and if you're winning, then by all means please do so. But if you're doing really poorly, Bowser can actually help you out. For starters, his revolution can take everyone's coins and redistribute them back to you evenly, which means if you have the least number of coins, you'll benefit the most. There's Bowser's Curse and Reverse Curse, which limits all 4 players to 1 through 3 spaces for 1 turn, or forces everyone to go reverse for 1 turn, which can be very useful to you depending on the circumstances. Bowser's Shuffle can force everyone to trade places at random. Bowser's Phone Giveaway will give you an item that allows you to send Bowser on any player, including yourself, whenever you want. The Bowser Suit Giveaway gives you a Bowser Suit, which is a very useful item to steal coins. Bowser's Coin Potluck will steal coins from everyone, so if your coin count is super low, you have nothing to lose and you could potentially make someone else lose what they need to buy an item or a star. Really, your only risk is landing on coins for Bowser, since that can make you lose coins and nobody else face a consequence. Albeit it takes up 2 spaces on the wheel, but the nice thing is in Mario Party 3, the timing of when you press A actually stops the roulette at your desired point, so you have some control over it in this game. It's by no means guaranteed since the roulette is very fast, but if you have faith in your timing, you can choose your outcome. And on top of all of that, if you have 0 coins, then Bowser will give you anywhere between 20 and 50 pity coins if you land on this space, which is huge. It's definitely something to keep in mind if you're at a junction and can land on Bowser. So yeah, I just wanted to go on this tangent to say that Bowser isn't always scary and evil. Sometimes he'll lend a helping hand to the less fortunate. Rounding out changes to the board play are the battle minigames, which now have a roulette to determine how many coins are gambled. The later on in the game, the more likely to decide a 50 coin wager. The only downside to this is that 0 coins is now an option, which essentially means there's a chance that landing on this space will lead to nothing happening. I don't really see a point to this though. When a player is going for a battle minigame space, the only thing they should have on their mind is how many coins will be played for, not whether or not a game will actually run. It was an unnecessary addition, and they should have capped the lower limit at 10 coins if they wanted there to be a chance that not many coins are gambled. Then there's the chance time space, which starts to see its downfall in this game. I stated in my last 2 videos that the OG chance time was the best iteration of chance time, and it's because starting in Mario Party 3 they start ruining it. You used to have the option to select which block you want first, and then the remaining blocks speed up every time you hit one. It was perfect. In Mario Party 3 the same pattern applies with block speed, only now they've taken control completely out of the player's hands as to which block you hit first. They've made it random and it's totally unnecessary. This is definitely an example of a game developer changing something for the sake of changing it, and it was a poor decision in my opinion. And finally, the newest space on the board in Mario Party 3 is the Game Guy space. I normally would discuss games at the end of my videos, but I think Game Guy spaces are unique enough to discuss on their own. And besides, when I'm discussing the boards, I think you should have an idea of what a Game Guy space entails. It's probably bold of me to assume that someone who is watching a retrospective of a 21-year-old game wouldn't know what a specific space does, but in my first 2 Mario Party videos, I got a few comments of people who had never played those games before, so I imagine the same thing might happen here. When a player lands on a Game Guy space, they automatically have to pay up all of their coins to Game Guy and take a shot at multiplying their coin count. The minigame that's then played is completely luck-based, and statistically speaking, there's a much higher chance that placing your bet on the smaller multiplier is the outcome that will win. For example, one minigame finds you betting on a cake eating competition between 2 chain chops. The larger chain chomp might win you back double your coin count. The smaller one might win you back 32 times your coin count. So realistically speaking, the smart move is to bet on the larger one since that is significantly more likely to be the correct winner. However, if the larger one is times 2 and the smaller one is times 4, then it might be worth the risk to gamble on the smaller winning to quadruple your coins since there's a decent chance the smaller one might win. There are rare occasions where the absurdly high outcome can win, but it's usually not worth gambling on. I imagine somewhere out there is a person who won 32 or 64 times their coin count at some point, and as a result they've had a gambling problem for the past decade or 2. The other minigame includes Game Guy's Lucky 7, where your goal is to match Game Guy's dice roll or higher in order to double your coins. The catch here is that you have the option to roll 2 dice, and rolling higher than a 7 will see you lose. If you do manage to land exactly a 7, your coins will multiply by 10. Then there's Game Guy's Magic Boxes, which is literally just a 50-50 pick between 2 boxes. If Toad is in the box you pick, then you get double your coins. At that point you can guess again to double your coins a second time, and then again a third time. It's up to the player to know when to quit, but at any point in time if you pick the wrong box and see Baby Bowser, all of your coins are gone. The last minigame is Game Guy's Roulette, which will be a roulette wheel with 6 options, each with a higher multiplier. You're more likely to win if you select the 2, 4, or 8 spots on the wheel, but even then you have to pick the correct one. This is a very hard minigame to win and is almost a guaranteed loss of all your coins. All in all, while I do prefer landing on the Game Guy space as opposed to having a space that simply just takes away all of your coins, I'm not a huge fan of it. I feel like it wastes a ton of time, and depending on which minigame you get, and which multipliers are available, it can statistically be determined to guarantee you double your coins or guarantee you lose all of your coins. It's a very high risk, high reward space, but the minigame roulette makes it a very difficult addition to get behind. I think I would prefer it more if the entry fee was capped off at 10 or 20 coins and the possible winning percentage was capped off at 4 times, since that way you're less likely to start a minigame where you can almost guarantee all of your coins are lost or all of your coins will be doubled. I do, however, like the idea of the Game Guy rare item. With the item, choosing to gamble on Game Guy could be a huge reward or punishment, but the control of it is completely in the player's hand. Likewise, forcing another player to go through a Game Guy minigame could also be a great punishment to make them lose their coins, or completely backfire and see them multiply them. And considering the fact that the Game Guy item is a rare item, it's not something that will commonly occur while playing. I haven't even began talking about the boards yet, but I think it's pretty clear that for the most part, Mario Party 3 has so much more going for it than Mario Party 2 does. There are so many more things to consider during gameplay, for better or for worse. The issue I have with the mechanics of 3 is I feel like some of them just go a bit too far. Ruling out the minigames and boards, I actually think it's a tie between the two games' mechanics. I like what 3 has to offer, but I like that 2 doesn't overstep in a lot of those aspects. I can definitely see why these two games are so divided between the fanbase given what's been discussed. But ultimately what I've always believed is a Mario Party game is only as strong as its boards, and it's time to look at those. We'll start with Chilly Waters. Right off the bat, I give Chilly Waters a lot of credit just for being the only snow-themed board in the Nintendo 64 Mario Party series. I'm actually surprised it took until the third game to get there, considering how many themes were repeated in the first 2 games. The board is a big square with a few junctions that allow you to take a shortcut through the middle of the board towards the center, with multiple possible output directions to take. At face value, these shortcuts appear to be a no-brainer, as they are often the quickest route to the star. The risk, however, is that no 2 players can be on the ice in the middle at the same time. If someone is already in the icy circle and another player sets foot on the ice, they'll both be moved to a space fairly close to the starting position. For me, this is a solid gimmick. It allows a player to weigh their options and decide if they want to take the risk, while providing another player the option to decide if they want to sacrifice their board progress just to screw over another player. It's a gimmick that allows for strategy and forces the players to pay attention to the current circumstances of the game. The second gimmick involves the happening spaces on the outside of the board. If you land on a happening space, a snowball will either chase you forward or backwards across the board. But since this game contains action happening spaces, you have the option to jump over the snowball so that you don't move at all. Of course, you have to time your jumps over the rolling snowball, otherwise you'll be chased. If you're confident in your timing, Chilly Waters can be a very good board to aim for happening spaces to win the happening bonus star, because you can basically aim for the spaces to either move you around the board in the direction you want, or you can just land on the space and jump over the rolling snowball to avoid any punishment. The only catch here is that you can potentially be allowing another player the same opportunity to move around the board if they choose to. These two gimmicks I really enjoy and think they make for a solid board. Easily 2 steps forward. So inevitably there has to be 1 step back. When you go towards the center of the board and choose your direction to exit, after the final space on the ice, the game will randomly decide whether you make it out of the center or if you slip and fall on your face and stay on the ice. It doesn't matter how many moves you have left. Even if you planned ahead and used a golden mushroom in hopes of not being stuck in the ice to avoid an opponent landing on the middle and sending you both back to the start, you can still hit a random slippery wall and be forced to give up the rest of your moves, only to be sent back to the start by the next player. For me, this is the 1 step back on this board. It's an almost perfect board that's ruined by 1 randomized gimmick. It still might be worth the risk to try your luck and make it out of the ice, but because of this luck element, I find that it's a much better idea to just circle around the board the long way, and only take inner paths if they lead to a star. However, everything else on the board I really like. The placement of the locked gates, boo, chance time, shops, all of it. But that 1 random element I feel like takes it a step too far. Not enough to ruin the board, but enough to lower my opinion of it a tad. Deep Blooper Sea also wins some points with me because it's unique. It takes place underwater and even has a good soundtrack to go along with it. 3 games in and it's the first time that I mentioned music in Mario Party. I must really love this tune. Anyway, this board can be considered a spiritual successor to Yoshi's Tropical Island in Mario Party 1. The board is split into a top half and a bottom half where all the players start in the bottom right corner. The connecting point between the halves is on the left side of the board where a player must choose 1 of 4 buttons to be allowed to travel to their desired half of the board. If you choose correctly, you'll be able to continue on your path. If you choose incorrectly, you're forced in the other direction. One of the paths is part of the bottom half of the board, and the other path is part of the top half. So if you're unlucky and end up on the path opposite of the star, then your only hope is to land on a happening space which will cause Blooper to move you from the bottom half to the top, or vice versa. The 4 buttons you choose from are similar to Peach's birthday cake in Mario Party 1. 3 out of the 4 buttons will be correct. If the first player gets it right, the next player has a 2/3 chance of also getting it right, and the third player is a 50-50. The difference here is that if a player chooses the 1 incorrect button, the buttons reset for the next player to reach this junction. So even if the person prior to you chose incorrectly, the same could happen to you. I mentioned the reverse item being broken earlier. This junction is an easy example of that. If you have the reverse mushroom, you can use it to back into this junction and choose whichever direction you prefer with no strings attached, so it's probably a good idea to pick one up on this map just in case. The last gimmick of this board to consider is the giant fish in the top left corner. It's hidden behind 6 different happening spaces. If you step on one of those spaces, the anglerfish chooses one of 3 directions and sends you to one of the corners of the board. Since you know which way the fish is going to send you, you can decide whether you want to tap A and escape the force movement, or to just get sucked up and move to your new location. But again, any other player that is in this area will also face this action time, so be wary of when you want to land on it if you're trying to farm for happening spaces. Once again, I have no issue of where everything is placed on this board. It's well designed and the gimmicks are good. However, once again, they take it a tad bit too far. I like the button pressing requirement to pass by the junction, and I also like the fact that a happening space will move you from one side to the other. I just don't like having both of them there. Having both of those tied together for the same outcome is just a bit too much reliance on chance in my opinion. Again, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Spiny Desert is the third board. This board is unique in that it has 2 stars on the board, but one of them is a mirage. You won't know which star is the real star until the fake one is passed though, so there's a chance you could be spending your time chasing the wrong star. When the fake star is passed, it disappears and doesn't reappear again until the real star is collected. This is a neat concept, and the simplistic nature of the board actually complements it pretty well. There are 2 quicksand circles on the board that contain happening spaces. If you land on the happening space, you and everyone else in the circle will be transported to the other one. Exiting the circle is completely optional, so you actually have the choice to continue circling and farming for happening spaces if you please. It was a tactic my cousin used on this board and it paid off. The action time in this map involves 2 cacti. If you can figure out the timing, you can basically decide between 3 outcomes. Hit the first cacti and end up on the right side of the board, the second cacti and end up on the left side of the board, or leapfrog them both and make it across. And due to the board layout, all 3 of those are completely viable options. You can't make it back to the start of the board unless you hit the first cacti, or if you have a skeleton key, which is also the only way to pass Boo. Choosing whether or not to hit the second cacti is contingent on where the star is though, as it can save you 5 spaces to intentionally get hit by instead of making the jump. Albeit you'll be skipping 2 item spaces and a chance time space, so you'll have to weigh your options. I like this board. I have virtually no complaints about it. If anything, the only downside is locking Boo behind a skeleton key, but there are plenty of skeleton keys in this game, so it's not really that big of a deal. The extra spaces in front of the locked gate and the overpoweredness of the reverse mushroom does mean there are a lot of strategic ways to exploit this map, but that's more of a complaint I have with Mario Party 3 in general, and less a complaint about this board. Also, if I'm gonna nitpick, whenever someone visits the Cactus event, they now have to look at 3 possible outcomes of where they can land on the map, and that can take forever. Woody Woods. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I don't know why this board is everyone's favorite. It's overrated. There's just way too much randomness involved. I understand it's appealing to have boards that require a player to stall and then blitz as quickly as they can. It's a gimmick that's often used on boards, but the idea is just taken way too far here. There are 3 separate junctions that will force you to go left or right depending on when you pass it. Every turn, the path of the junction will either point to the right or the left and change if anyone lands on a happening space or if someone pays Monty Mole 5 coins to change the path. There are a couple of locked gates that could potentially help you avoid those junctions, but they're completely useless if the star is in a path that requires you to pass the junction. Listen, I understand Mario Party is meant to have a certain element of luck and chance, but having a whole map based around it to this extent isn't enjoyable. In my last 2 reviews, I talked about how I didn't like Wario's Battle Canyon or Mystery Land because it felt like your location is hard to control and you could potentially end up in locations that are completely out of the way you intend more often than not if you're unlucky. Well, Woody Woods gives me that same feeling. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that this map is as bad as those 2. Its only saving grace is its aesthetic and theme. It's a visually pleasing board and has a good layout, but the randomness of the signs completely kills the map in my opinion. During this whole review, I've been mentioning 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but in all of my other examples, I don't think the 1 step back actually ruins the game. It just sets it back a bit. Well, Woody Woods' 2 step forwards are a good gimmick and level design, and its 1 step back is having 3 ways in which those signs change. And in this case, it actually ruins the board for me. I'm not interested in playing this board. It's not fun. If the sign changing direction no longer changed on every turn, or if you remove the fact that happening spaces flip the sign, then I'd be okay. But as it stands, I think it's a map to skip. Honestly, even its action time space is kinda lame. If you do find yourself playing this map, just collect a ton of reverse mushrooms. You're gonna need them. Alright, moving on. Creepy Cavern. Strangely enough, I think this board doesn't deserve the hate that it gets. It's underrated. My biggest issue with it is the fact that it's another board split into 2 halves like Yoshi's Tropical Island, and since Deep Blooper C already did that gimmick, it feels a bit repetitive. But the board stands out just enough to make it inoffensive. Plus, the 2 halves of this board also get split from top and bottom due to the giant womp laying on the ground. The womp will block your path and force you to remain in your quadrant unless you give him an item he asks for, or land on happening space just before him. And since there are only 2 happening spaces, 1 on each side that flip him, you're going to want to have the items he asks for on hand. The quadrants he blocked can also be accessed with 2 skeleton keys, but that would be a pretty large detour to the other side of the map. Or alternatively, you can land on the happening space on the tracks and a thwomp minecart will move you to the other half of the map. If this was all there was, I'd stop and say this was an excellent board. But of course, it's Mario Party 3, so they have to do one thing that kills it. The problem with these two railways that zip across the board is that they will always cycle which direction they're moving. If they're on the left side, they'll only go to the right, and if they're on the right side, they'll only go to the left. Which means if you're on the right side of the map, and Thwomp is already on the left side, and you need to get to the left side, well, you're not going to make it happen during the next time you land on a happening space. And the only way to move from left to right is with these rails or purchasing a skeleton key. A player should be able to rely on landing on one happening space to move to the other side, not two. And to add to this, if Thwomp happens to be on your side of the map, you can pay 5 coins to get a ride to the other side. But you can only do this if Thwomp is already on your side of the map. Again, in most boards that would be fine, but you're already locked out of traveling enough. You should be able to pay 5 coins and move to the other side. And not to beat a dead horse, but paying 5 coins technically doesn't even guarantee your passage across the board because it's an action time space. So if you don't jump at the right time, you can miss the rail and be stuck where you are until someone brings the rail back to you. It's too frustrating. Mario Party 3 somehow manages to have amazing boards that always take it a step too far. I've gone through 5 boards now, and the common theme is that they always manage to just about ruin a perfect board by adding one stupid thing that almost kills it. In my last 2 reviews, I said that I enjoyed 5 boards in each of the games, and the rest are skipped over. Well, in those games, usually 3 or 4 out of the 5 I'd consider my go-to boards, and the other 1 or 2 are leftovers that I play so that things don't get too repetitive with my group of friends. So far in Mario Party 3, I enjoy 4 out of the 5 boards, and spoiler alert, I enjoy number 6 too, which means there are also 5 boards here that I'd consider playing, with Woody Woods being the one that I'll skip. The problem is that none of the boards in Mario Party 3 are go-to boards. When I boot up the game, I don't know which one to play, and not because they're all good, but because they all have those 1 or 2 things that completely ruin the board for me. I can't select Chilly Waters without thinking about the fact that I'm going to have to spend the entire game on the outside of the map because of the dumb slip mechanic they added. I can't select Deep Blooper Sea without the thought of the dumb junction point ruining the strategy for at least one person I'm playing with and ruining the competitive aspect of the game and making it favor luck a bit more. Spiny Desert is a good map, but your go-to Mario Party experience shouldn't be a map that involves a fake star. That's the map you play second or third when you want your Mario Party fill. I can't select Woody Woods because screw that map. And I can't select Creepy Cavern without thinking of how many of us are going to be stuck in a quadrant for 3 or 4 turns because of poor level design choices. And I can't pick any board without thinking about how much the reverse mushroom will break the game. It's enough to drive you crazy because all of these boards have so much potential, and if there were software updates back in the days of the Nintendo 64, a simple patch would have fixed all of the gripes I have with them. But alas. I intentionally got my rant out of the way because I didn't want it to take away from the next board. I'm sorry, but anyone who says Waluigi's Island is weak is absolutely wrong. This is the only board in Mario Party 3 that legitimately feels like a proper Mario Party board in almost all of its aspects. It's close to being flawless, and I'd rank it with my favorite boards in the first 2 games. In fact, I'll get my one critique out of the way. I don't like that there's a 50-50 spot that takes you to Boo or sends you back to the beginning. It's so far away from the start, and it's ridiculous that they felt this lame gimmick was acceptable in this location. What's even worse is a star can spawn in this area, so the game could drag for quite a few turns if the players keep picking the incorrect path. But aside from that, I love this board. There are multiple routes that vary and are exciting and all take you back to the start for a new circuit. For starters, everyone must pass through this bomb circle over here in order to traverse the rest of the map. Landing on a happening space in this location will make a counter drop down from 5 until it eventually reaches 0. When it finally explodes, then everyone in that circle will lose all of their coins. It's a completely acceptable strategy to stay in the circled and farm happening spaces, by the way. If you think you can win the minigame star and are too far away from another star space, then it could be worth the risk to stay in the circle and collect happening spaces, just be wary of losing all of your coins. I almost won the game this way. At one point I had 0 coins and wasn't anywhere near close to first place, but one of my opponents still chose to steal a star from me because they knew I was winning a lot of minigames and landing on happening spaces. If they didn't rob me of that star, I'd probably have won the game. In order to exit the bomb circle, you have to exit from the top and go through the action time spin wheel to choose which direction you move. The speed of the action time wheel varies, sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, but it's usually easy enough to land on the direction you intend by watching the spinner closely. And if not, you can always keep a game-breaking reverse mushroom on hand, because of course reversing into this wheel means you can choose where you want to go without playing the action time. The direction you'll want to go will generally depend on the star location at the time, but looking beyond the stars there are some other things to consider. Moving right passes by the bank space, so if you know people have passed through there and the coin count has risen, then land on it if you can. Otherwise, there's a Game Guy and Bowser space you can access with or without a skeleton key, and if you're doing poorly, you can try your luck with either of those. I'd avoid them if I was winning though. If you do have a skeleton key, you can head over to Chance Time and try your luck there too. Otherwise, there's a battle minigame and an item space as an option. Honestly, the only reason to go right is if there's a star there, or if you have a skeleton key and are trying to make it back to the beginning as fast as you can. Without a skeleton key, the fastest way back to the start is to either go right and lose 5 coins on the bank space, or go up and left at the fork. They're both 9 moves away from the wheel, so you'll just have to keep an eye out for how many moves you have remaining when you get to the action time, so you can land on something more favorable as you journey back to the warp pipe that takes you back to the start. There's really not much benefit of going back to the start though. There's an item shop there, but you can get an item shop quicker by going up and then right at the fork. Or you can aim to go back to the start to stall while you wait for the next star space, but at that point you might as well just stay in the bomb circle if the count isn't that low and not many players are around. There's a star space that spawns at the start though, so obviously if the star is there, then by all means race to the starting point. Moving up on the wheel takes you to a fork. The right fork can lead to stars, but if not, then you have your path to boot. I already stated my least favorite part of this map is the 50-50 direction that'll send you back to the start, but if the star is there, you'll have to take this route anyway. On the plus side, if you have a ton of coins, you can potentially steal a star and buy one right after. On the top left corner of this map, there's a wild island that can be accessed by a drawbridge that's either left of the wheel or up from the wheel. The 2 drawbridges will alternate availability every time someone lands on one of the 2 adjacent happening spaces by each bridge. Accessing this island is risky, but you might be forced to do it since the star can spawn there. Aside from the bank space, every space on there alternates what it is. They'll either all be blue, red, battle, chance, Bowser, or game guy spaces. The only downside to these spaces is if everyone's up there, it could get absolutely insane and make the game drag a lot depending on what the current space lineup looks like. But it's not a game-breaking flaw by any means. Beyond that, there's this little circle in the bottom left that also spawns a star, and that's probably the only reason you'd go there. There's a locked gate right before you reach the bomb circle that would probably be used only if the star spawned after you pass this location, or if you pass a star and didn't have enough coins to buy it at the time. Or if your only alternative move will land you on a happening space that'll set the bomb off and make you lose all of your coins. That's pretty much it. It's actually a really good board in my opinion, and I know the general view of this board is fairly split, and I can see why. Aside from the dumb RNG element that leads you to boo, it has a properly balanced grasp on the luck vs skill aspect of Mario Party, which is more than I can say about the remainder of the boards in this game. Man, I haven't even talked about the minigames yet. There are 70 in this title, 5 more than the last game. They are all technically new minigames, but a lot of them are the same concept. Which is fine, it's hard to come up with 50 or more new ideas for each game, and there are a million Mario Party games, so I don't expect all the short minigames to be 100% unique. Plus, I've said before that fun can be found in every single Mario Party by just playing the minigames, and that still holds true here. The 24-player minigames are for the most part solid. None of them are completely based around luck. Maybe Picture Imperfect is, but even then, it's still completely balanced. MPIQ sucks because it'll just turn into a button masher, but even despite that, the questions asked are stupid half the time. Interesting concept, poor execution. Snowball Summit is similar to Bumper Balls in that it's really fun, but 2 skilled players will almost always make it end in a draw. Chip Shot Challenge completely favors the player going last. It should have been a split-screen simultaneous golf swing minigame. Those 3 minigames are probably the only ones I really have an issue with. MPIQ might as well be a luck-based button masher, and Snowball Summit might as well be skipped. Chip Shot Challenge does have a saving grace though in that your turn order is determined by what place you're in, so I think I can forgive it more than the other 2 I mentioned. So that's 17 or 18 out of the 20 games I'd say are fun if you're not playing with CPUs, because in that case you might as well assume they're going to win Frigid Bridges as well. Actually, I wanted to talk about The Beat Goes On. This minigame gets a lot of hate because of how long it takes, and once again, I think this is an example of a minigame being criticized for its CPU behavior. Mario Party is a multiplayer game first and foremost, and it should be treated as such. If you're going to criticize an aspect of it because of CPU behavior, then it should be noted. There is little chance The Beat Goes On will actually drag on to the point where it ends in a draw if you're playing in a room with 4 people. I don't know which group of friends sits together and agrees to all stay quiet while someone is inputting their beat. You can think of as many creative words or abbreviations as you want, but with 3 other people in the room screaming out random letters, this game gets a lot harder. And on top of that, when you're trolling the previous player and it becomes your turn, good luck figuring out what you're supposed to be inputting. I actually think this minigame is very fun in the right setting, and if it doesn't end in a draw, then it can be a sigh of relief for everyone. I've come to realize that a lot of people who complain about minigames dragging on either tend to be playing with CPUs or with friends online. I rarely feel like any minigame drags on too long. Even the painful ones are enjoyable because you're all in the pain together. But I digress. 2 vs 2 minigames. 12 of them. All good, no complaints. Shout out to Baby Bowser Broadside and Cosmic Coasters, but I don't really have much else to say aside from the fact that I enjoy all of these to a varying degree. There are 11 1 vs 3 minigames and they're all fun, but obviously balancing issues occur for a few of them, but they're not nearly as bad as previous Mario Party titles. I've heard that Spotlight Swim favors the 3, and while it might be a little bit, it wasn't enough to guarantee that 3 would always win. Tidal Toss is definitely a win for the 3 though, unless all 3 players are totally incompetent. It's okay if 1 player screws up in this minigame, but I doubt all 3 will. Likewise, Hand, Line, and Sinker almost always favors the 1. It's a fairly balanced minigame, but the control of the fish and the extremely long time limit tips the scale in the 1's favor. Ridiculous Relay might favor the 1, but I've found that if you have a strong button masher in the 3rd spot, you could pull off a win, and it's not that rare. Plus, it's really fun. Honestly, it's not too bad of a lineup. Coconut Conk, Boulder Ball, Crazy Cogs, Hide and Sneak, River Raiders, and Thwomp Pool are all solid and balanced enough. 8 battle minigames, and similar to the last game, 2 of them are completely luck-based. So there's a 25% chance again that if you land on a battle minigame, chance will determine who gets the most coins. Stack, Deck, and Merry-Go-Chomp make up the luck-based minigames, and while I prefer Bowser's Big Blast, these two do a good enough job of giving you that uncomfortable feeling of your stomach while playing. 3-Door Monty, Slap Down, Locked Out, and All Fired Up test your skill in various ways, while Storm Chasers and Eyesore make you run around with poor Nintendo 64 hitboxes in hopes that you can pull off at least 2nd place. It's a solid lineup. The 10 duel minigames are also good. In the last 5 turns of the game, a prediction will be made for who will win and that person will receive 10 coins. Either that or Bowser will host the last 5 turn event and predict the loser and take 10 coins away from them, because why not? Aside from that, the blue spaces and red spaces double in value, and landing on your opponent's space will trigger a duel. The other way to trigger a duel is with a dueling glove. In both of these cases, the challenging player gets to decide how many coins to wager, with the maximum amount being the number of coins the player with less coins has. I actually really enjoy a lot of these duel minigames. They did a very good job with them, and now that they're no longer tied to the specific board, you can play any of them on any board. The 6-item minigames are also no longer board specific. Unlike the duel minigames though, I think they took a turn for the worse. Swinging with the Sharks and Hay Batter takes tons of practice to figure out, and even then, they're way too hard to master. Winner's Wheel and Dory Dip, while extremely easy once you figure out the timing, still have that element that if everyone around you distracts you, you might screw up, so I can handle those 2 minigames. But did we really need 2 roulette wheel item minigames? Swing and Swipe is an easy waste of everyone's time. In previous titles, if there was a matching minigame, or one that requires you to focus on moving objects, at the very least you can say the player had to pay attention in order to earn their item. Swing and Swipe is an easy pick your item minigame. Bobbing Balloons is probably my favorite and one of the only times I think a one-player minigame was done right. It finds the perfect difficulty balance in my opinion. It doesn't give away a free item of your choice, but at the same time doesn't make it super easy to completely miss out on an item. But honestly, item minigames would be so much more valuable if the game wasn't throwing a million items at you seemingly at random. Whether through event blocks, or the item shops, or the items that spawn item shops, or even landing on item spaces and not getting to play a minigame, they added a lot to this game in so many ways it feels like they added too much. The boards are so good, but they just had to make them a little bit too exciting. The Game Guy spaces were a neat addition, but they had to make them just a little too exploitable. They added 2 new characters but took away costumes. At the very least they have a very good minigame lineup, but that's standard for Mario Party. Why did they have to add spaces in front of the skeleton gates? That's unnecessary strategy that wasn't needed to be implemented. They took strategy away from the actual board design and created a mechanic for strategy that was completely unnecessary, and game-breaking in the case of the reverse mushroom. I said before that Mario Party 1 is a game you play when you're looking for those wild Mario Party experiences. Mario Party 2 is a game you play when you're looking for an all-around excellent Mario Party title. So when do you play Mario Party 3? Well, I'll tell you. You play Mario Party 3 when you're bored of Mario Party 2. If you can only buy one Mario Party game on the Nintendo 64, it has to be Mario Party 2. And then when you have your fill of that, you can play Mario Party 3. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that the only way to enjoy Mario Party 3 is if you're playing with a group of people that actually like to make it a point to get very good at this game. You don't play it with the casuals. You don't play it with your younger or older family members. You play it with people subscribed to the Mario Party subreddit or in a Mario Party Discord. Those are the opponents because when you play against them, everyone is on an even playing field. They know how to bounce off of skeleton gates and how to exploit the reverse mushroom. They've watched strategy videos and know how to compete in every aspect of their game. That's the kind of group I'd need to play Mario Party 3 with. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't want to play a Mario Party title that way. If I wanted to play a multiplayer Mario series that the fans took way too seriously and found technical means of manipulation to create a more competitive environment, I'd play Super Smash Bros. And I'd have more fun with it. But that's not what a Mario Party is. Not to me at least. Mario Party 2 is still the best Mario Party game on the Nintendo 64. Whether I play 3 or 1 after that depends entirely on the group I'm with and what type of game we're looking for. But they're on the same tier otherwise. One thing I can say for certain though is that all 3 of these are very fun games when you have the right group of people, which is always to be expected of Mario Party. I'm already working on my Mario Party 4 video, so don't forget to subscribe so you can get a notification on when that video drops. In the meantime, I've put my Nintendo 64 controllers away for a bit because we'll be playing GameCube Mario Party games for the next few weeks. If you stuck around, thanks for watching. Deen, out.